Welcome back to the channel. Now today we're going to go on another hunt with Venom, my old 20-year-old Harris Hawk, and he is a bit fitter now. He's starting to gain a bit of fitness. The weather has been pretty rubbish recently and we've only had the odd really nice day. Most of the time we've had high winds and rain, which is typical of where we live. There was absolutely no wind today, which is quite a rarity. There's usually some degree of breeze, and to be honest the hawks much prefer hunting with a bit of wind, I think, because it gives them a bit of an advantage. It adds to their general speed, whereas on a day like today where it's flat calm, really he's having to make a lot more of an effort. Now I hunt each of my hawks in a different way, but with Venom I tend to just let him do his own thing. He's a much older bird, so he often likes to just follow on, which means he'll just fly to a perch or he'll soar around a bit and then he'll come and land on me because I'm a portable perch. But I don't hold on to his jesses, which are those leather straps hanging down off his anklets around his legs. I just let him do his own thing. So it's a good way to keep him fit and to keep building that fitness with flying when he's not chasing and hunting game. And it also is just something that he really enjoys, so I like to let him just do his own thing really. So we began our session today by climbing up the side of one of the hills just above our house. This takes a little while to get going, but rather than walking straight up the hill in a more simple direction, I tend to take a bit of a wider circle just so that I can cover some of the ground here, because as you can see it's very tufty, there's a lot of cover, there's usually a few pheasants knocking around and I could hear a couple in the distance, but to be honest there wasn't a lot going on here. And unfortunately Venom won't work with my dogs, which means that I have to work a lot harder to find any prey. When I work the goshawks in comparison, I can use my pointing dogs and they will cover all that ground for me, which saves me a lot of walking and means that they can hold game in place ready for when I catch up and I can take a flight. Of course Venom will always choose a nice easy fence post if he can find one. There's not a lot of trees out here, so he will happily perch on something like that, and I just tend to ignore him and he will come when he's ready, but I don't really give him a reward for that kind of flight, otherwise he'd do it all the time. So on reaching the top of this part of the hill, it flattens out quite nicely, which is a bit of a rest after quite a steep little hill climb. It's quite hard to see with the sort of fish angle on the lens just how steep it gets in that first climb. Now while I was busy filming the floor, Venom shot out in front of me as he'd seen a cock pheasant just getting up, and he unfortunately missed this. He did actually manage to grab the back end of it, as you'll see in a moment, but he was unable to catch this one. Oh, he took his back end out, bud. I think that's what you were left with. Just feathers, mate. Should we keep this one? It's nice, isn't it? So having missed that bird, we carried on undeterred and got to the top of a ridge which looks down into a lovely big bowl that usually has some pheasants knocking around in. At this point Venom took off and it was very clear he'd seen a couple of pheasants. It's very hard to see in the footage here, but they just get up. One sets off early and then a second just in front of him. You can just see it there flying left to right. And Venom just lands on the ground looking pretty disappointed, but it was a hell of a long flight for him. I gave him a couple of minutes and then he just came back to me on the glove. It's often good just to take a minute to have a look around and take stock of where you are. It's good to enjoy the view and also to have a listen to see if you can hear anything, because pheasants, for example, make a cry when they're talking to each other, so it often gives me a clue of where I'm going to head next. Having made our decision, we decided to head down into the bowl itself rather than go up over the top of the next hill on the left there. I'd heard some calls from a couple of pheasants, and I knew there was a pheasant down in that orangey red bracken down in the base of the bowl, so I decided that was probably the best way for us to head next. As we got closer to the bottom of the bowl, we slowed down and stopped and just had a quiet listen. Venom, you can see there, bobs his head, and he has actually spotted the pheasant, but it's moving around, and there was some rustles in the sort of grasses below us, so we could hear it nearby. So I was just very quietly making my way forward just to see if I could give Venom a little bit of an advantage. You can see how he leans and turns his head, and he's very much focused on something, so I just lifted him up so he had a better height advantage. At this point, Venom took off, and I was pretty certain that he was heading off after something exciting. I will never know, because by the time I got up over the lip where he disappeared, nothing had happened. I had not seen anything move, so it might have been a rabbit sort of hidden down in the grass. I decided really that we probably weren't having too much luck here, and Venom was getting quite full because he had lots of little tidbits as we were going, so I decided to try one more area before we called it a day. I must admit, I really do enjoy watching Venom just circling around. On a windy day, he'll be finding loads of lift here, and indeed he much likes to swirl around up on the saw, and he'll stay up for quite a while, but as there's no wind today, he didn't really have much to work with. We now spied a flock of feral pigeons that were sitting on an abandoned railway carriage, which you can just see in front of you, and they normally roost in our barn where we keep the dogs actually, but this is where they like to come in the day, and Venom absolutely loves a pigeon. However, there was no chance he was going to get these. You can see them lift up and do their lovely flying around over the top of him. I was pretty much ready at this point to call it a day. It just wasn't working out for us. However, at this point I noticed Venom was staring down into the corner of the carriage, and a rabbit bolted out and under the gate.
Ooh, rabbit.
Once I realised Venom had caught this, I had to take a bit of a run, and you'll now see me shove my camera into my pocket, because the most important thing for me is to make sure that the animal that he's caught has been dispatched as swiftly as possible. It's our duty as a falconer to make sure that the prey that we've caught has been responsibly dispatched before prioritising anything else. Venom much prefers eating feather to fur, so I just traded him off it for some chicken, and then I popped it into my falconry bag so that I could take it home, check it over and prepare it for Fable to eat. I firmly believe in making sure that there's no waste with anything that I do, and it's great that the birds often feed themselves through the winter. I always make sure that I don't leave any part of the animal, anything gets used, and I'm going to show you that now because I think it's important to show the total circle of what happens in a day when I go hunting. After popping Venom back on his perch to relax after his flying session, I took Alfie indoors and sorted him out before we went back out to start preparing the rabbit. Depending on what I'm going to do with the prey that the hawks catch, I will field dress or prepare it in a different manner. In this case today, I was just going to simply gut out the lower part that Fable won't eat and then leave her with most of the rest of the food. I also took off the outer fur in the main part of the body, and I'm actually going to save that to use for a training dummy for one of the pointing dogs. It was safe to say that Fable was very happy with her meal. There's nothing better as a falconer to be able to offer my birds warm, fresh food.
As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you all very soon.